Hey everybody, welcome to your first module of multivariate statistics. This is the module where we get familiar with R and RStudio, and we learn some basic descriptive statistics and some other fun things. So should be a blast. And I'm going to get things started by sharing my screen, and we will go from there. All right, so what you are probably seeing right now is my RStudio environment. Now mine might look a little bit different from yours. It might have a white dark background instead of a dark background. That's absolutely fine. You may have a slightly newer version of RStudio, so you might have an extra tab here or something else. Again, absolutely fine. They will do exactly the same thing and accomplish what we want to. So I really like RStudio because I think it really turns R, which is a really powerful computation software, into something that's fairly user friendly. I think it's really user friendly with a little bit of practice, and also sort of organizes things in a way that seems to make a lot of sense. So let's walk through some of the components here. So on the left here, I have my console, and you'll see here it says restarting R session. Yours may not say that because you may have just opened R to start. And you see a little cursor here that's blinking. And so this tells you this console part, this is R itself. So R is sort of running, and we are running in RStudio. So I've opened RStudio. RStudio automatically recognizes R and adds it and sort of runs it in one little window here called the console. All right, we have a couple other useful windows. Up here we have the environment window. This is where when we start to add objects, and we'll learn what objects are, they will pop up here in our environment. And then down here on the lower right, this is an extremely important area. So here we have a number of useful things. First of all, we have a file pane here. This allows us to work with our file system. So if you have files saved on your computer, you can load them in through RStudio, which is really helpful. You can load in data, you can load in code, all sorts of things. We have a pane for plots that keeps track of our plots. We have a package manager. We have a really nice help menu and then a viewer window. So a lot of useful things that we'll talk through. Now the goal here is not to become experts in RStudio and R in the first 20 minutes. So we're just gonna get our feet wet here. We're gonna try a few things, become more familiar with how the software works, and then we'll go from there. Okay? So first off, let's talk a little bit about R itself, the software that runs underneath this program. So R is a program that is designed primarily to do math, statistics, but can do lots of other things. It's also a programming language. And so you can do all sorts of really cool computations, you can do statistics, but then you can also do lots of really cool things like generate plots and other types of documents as well, which is really neat. So this command line that's blinking, you can type something into this. So for example, if I type 15 plus 4 in this command window and I press return, notice I get a response that says 19. So R is a computation engine. It will do mathematics for you. It'll do fancy mathematics and also basic mathematics. So that's really cool. So you can do all sorts of, you can do 15 times 4. You can do lots of different stuff. You can do 15 squared with a little caret. Lots of different things happening there. So it has this pattern, which is called input and output. It's kind of an input output program. So you put in a command and R wants to spit out a result. That's kind of how the interaction goes with the program. Now, the cool thing about R is that it also is what's called an object oriented program, in that you can create objects that you can store and use later. And this is where it really helps when it comes to doing statistics, because you can load in, for example, lots of different data sets, and R will store all those data sets at once, and you can work with them simultaneously, which is very hard to do, for example, in something like SPSS or even in Stata, to be honest. So To assign an object, so let's say this number 15. Instead of doing math with it right away, I want to save it for later. I use what's called the assignment operator, and that is just a little arrow. Notice the arrow is pointing to 15, and then I want to give it a name. So we'll call that A. So what I've just done is I've taken the symbol A and I've assigned it to the number 15. So A now stands for 15 in the R environment. I'm going to hit enter. Oh, it's flipped. That's right. Okay, so this is important. The direction of the arrow is important. So it's actually, and this is what it looks like. So this is real time. I want to share with you. So this is what it looks like when you get an error. You get these little orange warnings, and you'll come to be okay with them and just kind of work with them. So I actually need to assign A and do it this way. So A is 15. So the number 15 is pointing towards A. There we go. And so it pops up here in the global environment. We see values. A is equal to 15. Okay, so let's assign another value, B. So go down here. B is equal to 4. Okay, just like that. All right, so now I have these values stored in my environment and I can use them later. Okay, and so I could do, for example, I could do, instead of 15 plus 4, I could do A plus B. And R tells me that A plus B is 19. 15 plus 4 is 19. I can also do A times B, and that's 60. 15 times 4 is 60. So what's happening is I now can do symbolic. I can do math with the symbols, and R is going back to those values underneath and tracing them through. So just a little bit of the power of what's symbolic programming, that you're able to attach values to things and work with them later. It's going to be extremely handy. Okay, so that's a super quick crash course in how R works. Okay, it's an input-output programmer. You type in a command, you hit enter, it spits out a result. If it doesn't like what you typed in, you're going to get an orange error, which we found out, right? And it's also an object-oriented programmer, which means you can assign values, symbols, that then live in the environment for as long as you have the software open, and you can use those symbols to do math and other things to sort of speed up what you're trying to do. All right. Okay. So now the most common way in which we're going to interact with R in RStudio is through something that's called code or syntax. So that's the most common way that we interact with R. And the kind of code and syntax that I really prefer is called an R Markdown file, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But so what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to load in some code, some syntax into the R environment. You don't just have to type in R, you can work with code that's already created, which is really nice. And so what I've done is I have pointed, so here's this file window, and notice how there's little arrows here going across the top. You can navigate to different places in your computer. So here's my Google Drive, and here's this year, and here's multivariate statistics, course materials, week 1. All right, so your file system probably looks a little bit different. You might have this in a downloads file or something else, but there is a file that I gave you for this week, an R Markdown file, that I would like you to actually load into your environment if you want, if you'd like to follow along. And so to do that, you just point your computer to wherever that file is. It's called MVS underscore module 1 underscore handout. And notice the end of that, you know, the file extension, like a doc, a Word file is a doc, and an Excel file is an XLS. And an SPSS file, right, is a .sav. The extension here is R Markdown, so RMD. So those are very, very useful files. So I'm going to click on it, and notice, just like that, on the upper left corner, this console window kind of went away, right? It used to be a huge um, window here that where I was typing in inputs, but our studio kind of recognizes, oh, okay, so you're working with code here that already exists, and so it's going to open up that file in a different way. And so here's the R Markdown file, and what I like about the R Markdown files is that it is a combination of text, so you can write things and you can put things in bold and underline and give things titles. And then you can also embed R code to run along the way, which is very, very handy. So in this case, I've got a top component here to this, and it's separated by these colons. And so or these dashes, and I have a title here, Multivariate Statistics Module 1, Getting Started with R, Descriptive Statistics and Plots. You can change that if you want. And I have my name here as the person who put this code together. And then output, this tells you how, the way in which this code will be output. And here it's going to be output in what's called an HTML notebook. And we'll learn what that is in a little bit. We don't have to worry about that too much now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to load in some packages. And packages are extremely useful tools anytime you work with R. Pretty much every time I work with R, I load in a few handy packages that I use all the time. And so I'm going to teach you about them now. The three here are the tidyverse. We'll learn about a lot about the tidyverse. Psych, which is a really great psychometrics package that does a lot of cool stuff with measurement and descriptive statistics. And then the Haven package, which is basically a Rosetta Stone for translating data of any type, which is pretty amazing. So you can have SPSS data, it'll read SPSS data, it'll read Stata data, it'll read Excel sheets, it'll read you name the file, SAS files, and it'll write files in any of those formats too. So you can create, for example, you could take a Stata file, you could open it, and then you could create an SPSS file from that, all using this Haven package. And basically, a package is just a collection of functions, and we'll learn about functions in just a second. Okay, so let's load up these packages. And to do this, notice how there's a little play button here in the middle, and notice how this group of code is a little bit lighter than the rest of the document. And in yours, again, if you have a lighter version of RStudio, it may not be all dark, but you'll see that the code is set off from the rest of the document. And so here, you'll see these dashes and an R. So this is actually a little chunk of R that's going to run some R code and spit out a result. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the tidyverse, the psych package, and the Haven package. Load those three things. If you have not installed these, and you do have to install them, R by itself comes with some packages, but it does not come with these. You can go to the package manager right here, click install, and it's very easy. You just type them in, tidyverse, and notice as you start typing, there's predictive typing, so there. And you can separate them with spaces or commas, psych, and a space, Haven, and click on it. And then you can just click install. I would install the dependencies, and the default, whatever comes up here to the library, is usually just fine as well. So that's how you install packages. There's also a command called install.packages, but you don't have to know that. The nice thing about RStudio is it kind of makes that all work. So I'm going to click cancel. I don't need to, I have them already installed, so I'm going to leave it at that. All right. So I'm going to click that play button. And notice I now get a little bit of output here below the packages that I loaded. And notice it says attaching packages. So you get lots of different information here. A lot of this is not terribly important, to be honest. This is sort of under the hood stuff that R is telling you about how it's functioning. One function in one package is sort of overlapping with another function. That's completely fine. But it does tell us all the different components of, for example, the tidyverse. So the tidyverse is actually a collection of 8 different packages. That's why I like to load it at once, because you don't have to load them simultaneously. And it is so helpful because these packages are all designed with very specific purposes. For example, ggplot is a really great package for creating plots and graphs. Tibble is a package for working with data frames, which we'll learn about in a moment. TidyR helps us work with organizing our data and keeping it sort of clean. ReadR is a package for inputting data. PerR does automation. We won't get into that. dplyr is a very important package. It actually helps us manipulate data, do data management and data cleaning in a very easy way. StringR is a package for working with string variables, and forcats is for working with factors. Again, you don't need to memorize all this. We will go through it. We'll take our time. For now, it's just important to know that the tidyverse is a collection of packages that helps make your job easier as a data analyst, as someone who's analyzing data, which we all are in this class. Okay, so I think that's probably a pretty good place to start for sort of part one of this video. So just to recap what we covered, we started with the bare bones. We started with how you input into R and you get an output result. We did a little math. Then we added this idea of an object. So we assigned the value 15 to A, 4 to B, and we did some symbolic math with those things. And then we talked about R Markdown files, which we're going to use a lot in this class, and how they work a little bit. And then we talked about packages, how to download them, and how to install them. Okay, so that'll just get us started. In part two of this video, we'll talk about actually loading in data, looking at data, and visualizing it just a little bit. So hopefully you're off and running. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.